You're listening to Wildlife Control Consultant, where we provide research-based information on all things related to vertebrate pest management. Hi, Stephen Vantassel here, Wildlife Control Consultant, bringing another episode of the Wildlife Control Consultant podcast. Hey, glad to have you on board. I hope your week went well. If you're wondering what Wildlife Control Consultant podcast is all about, it's all about research-based information about all things related to the control of vertebrate pests. So if that's something that interests you, then this is a podcast for you. Publish about once a week, both on YouTube and Rumble. Love to have you subscribe to the channel and ring the bell so you can be notified of future updates. And of course, if you have questions, comments, thoughts, you can put them into the comment section below the video, or you can email me at wildlifecontrolconsultant@gmail.com, wildlifecontrolconsultant@gmail.com. So I'd love to get your ideas for future shows. If you'd like to be on the show, if you have criticisms, comments, definitely reach out to me. We'd love to hear from you. If you have needs of people working on perhaps your PowerPoint that you need to have developed, or some ghostwriting or research done, or perhaps even some online or even in-person training, we'd love to hear from you as well. So this week, I wanted to talk a little bit about fumigants. Now, you may or may not know, but the EPA has changed the requirements for fumigants, particularly for restricted use for fumigants and their use in the United States. So in prior times, you could have a one category that would cover the use of fumigants and also rodenticides, depending on the regulations within your state. But 2026, I believe for most states, I don't think there's going to be any beyond 2026. Of course, it's a big country, a lot of different states. But nevertheless, there's a requirement for either specific training on fumigants, or you have to have a separate category for the use of fumigants, particularly the restricted use fumigants, sort of like aluminum phosphide type products. You may know it as Phostech or phosphine gas and that sort of thing. So you can certainly learn more about that type of situation within your Department of Agriculture, whoever licenses pesticides within your state. What I wanted to talk about today was, how do you protect yourself from exposure to the toxic gases that you're going to be working with? Now, you shouldn't be exposed for any length of time, to be sure, but when we're dealing with fumigation of rodent burrows, for example, and of course you always want to be sure you're following the label, that you're not doing it up against a building, you're not going to be exposing bystanders and this sort of thing. But ultimately, you as the applicator are going to be someone who is going to have the most risk of exposure, even if that exposure can be brief, whether with general use fumigants like ignitable gas cartridges, or with something more serious like aluminum phosphide tablets that you may use to fumigate burrowing rodents. So you may think, well, how do you respond to the wind? How do you position yourself in relationship to the wind? Now, you may or may not read something and think, well, maybe I need to be upwind from where I'm applying. So that way, if the wind is coming this way, then you would want to be up here and then applying the pesticide over here so that the wind is kind of blowing things away from you. It certainly makes sense. But I'm not so sure that is the correct way to go. And I want to put this out there for people to comment on and to think about. And that is, there's something in whitewater rafting or canoeing where it's called an eddy. And an eddy is when you have a rock and water is flowing past the rock, around it actually. What happens, if you look carefully, you'll find that the portion right behind the rock, the water is actually flowing against the current. So it creates this sort of vortex, but then some water is moving back. I think the same thing occurs when it comes to fumigants. And that is, if you're standing here and you're applying a fumigant here and the wind is coming from this direction, that the gas may actually be coming back towards you. So I'm suggesting that people actually do this, that they stand perpendicular to the wind. So that way, when the wind comes along, it's hitting the pesticide directly and then taking it away from you. I can't claim this because there's going to be other issues involved when we're dealing with vortexes, that is the nature of the gas, perhaps the speed of the wind. But I want to just sort of put out a little experiment here, demonstration perhaps, to get you thinking about vortexes and wind, and perhaps start a conversation about moving forward and protecting yourself from exposure to these toxic gases. But before I begin, let me tell you the equipment that I'm using. So I'm using here an Arctic Haze. Let me kind of move that forward for you here. Arctic Haze 3-smoke stick kit. What it consists of is it consists of the smoke pen, and I'm going to take the cap off here. Now you notice it has a wick in it, and I'm just going to quickly, take that out. There's your wick, okay? And we're going to just insert the wick into the pen. So you're supposed to leave out about 1/3 of an inch or something, so there you go. It comes with two other wicks. And of course, you have to light it. So let me just sort of light it here and show you what that smoke looks like. Now you're supposed to let it burn for a little bit to make sure it gets heated up properly, which I'm going to be doing here, right? Then you blow it out. Now you see the smoke, okay? And this is used by, building inspectors to see if there's any drafts in places, to find if you can look for leaks and that sort of thing. Now I'm going to turn on a fan that I have over here to the right. I'm going to turn it on low, and you can see when I have it turned, the wind is blowing that smoke away from the pen, okay? And it's turning it white. It's turning it red. What happens if I put an object like myself in front of it? So we're going to pause for a minute and we're going to show that. So let's start taking a look just with the flame, because it can be a little hard sometimes to see the smoke. So let's start with just the flame. I have a regular Bic lighter, and we have the fan running behind me at the lowest possible setting, and it's about 4 feet away at max. So notice, you'll see sometimes the flame is moving away from me, but sometimes it's moving back towards me. Now my body is not completely, if I'm down here, notice how it flows closer toward me. Because that wind, I'm arguing, is moving around me and then coming back. Let's take a look at the smoke here. Again, notice the flame is moving towards me. Notice how the smoke is moving towards me as well. Why is it moving toward me when the wind is blowing this way? That's the question that I have. But notice if I do this, of course, all of it hard to see. Let me do it this way. Can you see the smoke? The smoke is not coming towards me, it's blowing that way because I'm perpendicular to the wind now, as opposed to blocking the wind now, which can now make it move towards me. Just a thought. I'm thinking definitely we need to be thinking more about our positioning in relationship to the smoke. Now, obviously, you don't want to be dallying around with fumigants, of course. That's not my point. My point is not that you're going to be dallying around with it. My point is that for those brief periods of time when you are going to be exposed to the gas, as you're manipulating the gas material, manipulating it to get into the burrow, there is that short period of time that there's potential for exposure. That's the period of time you want to be thinking, how are you positioning yourself toward the wind? And you need to plan, if you're attacked toward a field, into those burrows, to making sure, as I'm suggesting, maybe perpendicular to the wind is going to be safer than upwind. But I can't swear to it because I think there's more research that needs to be done. So I'm hoping this starts a conversation for us to think about as we're trying to protect ourselves from exposure to pesticides as we're using them to manage pests for our clients. Well, I'm Stephen Vantassel. I'm the owner of Wildlife Control Consultant, and you've been listening to the Wildlife Control Consultant podcast, where we deal with all things technical related to vertebrate pest control. If you have questions, comments, thoughts, perhaps suggestions for future shows, definitely reach out to me at wildlifecontrolconsultant@gmail.com, or you can make a comment right below this particular video. I'd love to have you subscribe to the channel and ring the bell so you can be notified of future episodes. As I said earlier, of course, we publish about once a week. Till next time, take care, everyone.
This is the disclaimer for Wildlife Control Consultant podcast. Vertebrate pest control is an inherently dangerous activity involving risk of bodily injury to you, others, and/or property. Vertebrate pest control also involves legal issues, so be sure to always follow national, state, provincial, and local laws when using pesticides and/or other control methods when controlling pests. Wildlife Control Consultant LLC, Stephen M. Vantassel, or their affiliates are not responsible for your use of the information provided here. Always consult a qualified and appropriate professional before employing the information provided here.